Good evening, Steeler fans. We are back for I guess not totally off-season edition of the Steelers Night Shift, but we're pretty much there. This is the post-Super Bowl edition of the Steelers Night Shift. There we go. And as we all know, the gentleman who's joining me here today has been making himself a little bit of a world tour, or at least in the South and the West parts. But Mr. Alan Saunders joining us this evening. And Mr. Saunders, what was your favorite city to visit on your world tour?
That's a good question. I love Mobile, probably Mobile. I really enjoyed San Francisco, though. It was my first time there. Didn't have a lot of expectations and had a really good time. So, wasn't a fan of the Super Bowl hosting setup with the game and the practices and all that being in San Jose or Santa Clara, and then the media center being in San Francisco. They are not close together. Basically, if you're from Pittsburgh, it's sort of be like if they were playing the game in Acrisure Stadium and the practices were on the south side and the media center was in Newcastle. It's pretty much like what we did this week. So not great, but I really enjoyed my time in San Francisco. I had a great trip.
Sounds like some expensive Uber fares, if anything, or at least car rentals. And in San Francisco, the car break-in thing is pretty wild there from what I've read. So, but speaking of Super Bowl, that was quite a butt whooping by the Seattle Seahawks on the New England Patriots, who the Steelers did beat in the regular season, and they lost to Seattle. So I think that's back-to-back years that the Steelers have played the two teams in the Super Bowl, with Kansas City and Philadelphia last year, and then the Patriots and Seahawks this year. So that's a really interesting little trend there. But it's been a lot going on, though, on the Steelers front. Of course, Coach Mike McCarthy was hired, and he has began to fill out his coaching roster. What are your thoughts on those who have been selected for the coordinators and even some of the position coaches?
Yeah, I think it's a really good coaching staff. I think Patrick Graham's a really good coordinator. I've always sort of admired the things that he does from afar. I think he's a really good fit for this defense in terms of, it's a 3-4 scheme. They don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel to make what they have fit. And then, I probably knew a lot less about Brian Angelico. I like what I've heard so far, but I wasn't as familiar with him, from the outset of the process. Looks like a really good coaching staff, though. Really impressed with the depth of it in terms of, Jason Simmons and Joe Witt, or, James Campen. Like, you have a lot of experience, but then there's also some young guys. I really like the coaching staff. I think it's probably one of the better ones I've had in a while. And I think that was pretty obviously going to be one of the strengths of Mike McCarthy. When you look at his tenure in Dallas, he had a great coaching staff, and in Green Bay as well. So there was a lot of. I think I wrote earlier this offseason, there's a lot of branches on that tree to find some guys, and they certainly did that.
No, certainly. I will say, because you mentioned Campen, I remember when Sean Surratt was let go, and they started to look for a new, or I'm sorry, no, this was before Surratt. It was Mike Munchak when he walked, and that's when McCarthy was fired. That's pretty much the entire Green Bay coaching staff kind of went their own ways. I was hoping the Steelers back then would get Campen in the door, at least for an interview. So better late than never. So that's I'm definitely excited about that. Watching Patrick Graham's defense with the Raiders, I know, like, statistically the Raiders don't look great, but I mean, the only guy I really saw on that defense that you could say is like, oh, he's a dude, is Max Crosby. I mean, when your next best guy potentially is Devin White, I just don't know if that's gonna.
Yeah, I mean, not much either way.
Yeah, but one of the things that you kind of mentioned was, he's very flexible with his defense. I mean, he would show all kinds of looks, especially against younger quarterbacks. I really like that aspect from what I've seen so far. There's definitely some exciting things to be had there, and we will definitely see how it all pans out. I think they still got to fill the tight ends coach position, or do they have more than that, you think?
certainly that. We'll see. I probably need some more like offensive side, like quality control kind of guys, you know. But I think of the full position coaches, just tight ends coach, and then we'll see. Yeah, I was a little surprised that we didn't get any news in the early part of this week actually about getting that last one filled. Um, because hey, combine's in 2 weeks, so coming right along.
Absolutely. And while we kind of transition to combine, will you be continuing your world tour to the combine this year?
Oh yeah, for sure. Headed to the combine. Couple weeks. Good crew with me, DB and Brendan and Joe Smeltzer from Nittany Sports Now. So it should be a good time.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny you mentioned Nittany Sports now. There's going to be a lot of folks, a lot of prospects, a lot of teams all interviewing. There are some prospects who I think maybe are not going to, make miracles, happen with their stock boosting, but they'll definitely have an opportunity. Some guys like Drew Aller, the former Penn State quarterback, and you got some guys like Desmond Reed, local Pitt products. He was invited to the combine. And I'm curious on your thoughts. Who are three guys you think wouldn't be surprised if they shift their draft stock from maybe day 3 to day 2, or maybe even day 3 to day 1 as you kind of go into that?
Oh, okay. So guys who currently Kevin Coleman from Missouri is currently 125 on the mock draft database big board. He's gonna run 4.3 maybe. I think he'll go way up. So that's one for sure. Um, uh, Corner maybe. I'm thinking. I think there are a bunch of corners that have the opportunity to go way up and also to go way down. There are a bunch of guys in the middle, kind of in that corner class. Um, Will Lee from Texas A&M. I like his tape. Dalen Everett from Georgia. I like his tape. Those are guys in the fourth round right now that if they run well, they could go up. But like, I'm not sure they're going to. Damani Jackson from Alabama. He was a track guy in high school. I expect him to run well. I didn't think he was great at the Shrine Bowl. We'll see what happens with his stock. Uh, so those are some guys that I think probably could go up or down based on the combine. Des Reed is a guy who I haven't really heard any draft buzz at all. He's going to run unbelievable. It would not surprise me at all if he gets himself into that picture with a good run. Um, yeah, those are the guys that kind of come to mind off the jump. There are lots of guys also that like are on the edge of the first round. A couple of safeties, Emmanuel McNeil Warren from Toledo and Dylan Cinnamon from Oregon. I think those guys could run their way into the first round. And a couple corners, Chris Johnson from San Diego State, Keontae Scott from Miami, Keith Abney from Arizona State, and Colton Hood, who I thought was really good at the Senior Bowl from Tennessee. I think those guys could all get themselves into the first round with good runs in Indy.
Absolutely. It's funny you kind of mentioned, guys who not only could boost their stock, but also could lower as well. One of the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, Josh Jobe, love that last name. He actually went undrafted because his 40 time was something like 4.65, something crazy, and it just turned off a lot of teams. So it's a really good point you make there. We do have our first comment here. Hunter says, "Can we please trade up in the second round and take defensive line? They really like Lee Hunter, Caden McDonald, and Christian Miller. We need to continue to build the trenches and get younger." And that's definitely been a trend with the Weidel and Omar Khan combo. You saw them draft Keanu Benton in 2023. Of course, last year they drafted Derek Harmon, but they've also went later rounds as well with some defensive linemen. Do you think they would trade up in the first round for something, or do you think they'd trade up in the second round, like Hunter suggests?
Well, I mean, I think you could trade up in the first round. Peter Woods, Caleb Banks. Those are the two guys that I would expect to be in that range. Caden McDonald, I don't even know if he gets to the second round, to be honest. I think he's a first round player. Lee Hunter and Christian Miller, early second round for sure. That's a big trade up. I don't know. I really like Daryl Jackson from Florida State. He's probably in between their second and third round picks right now. He was a Shrine Bowl guy, got called up to the Senior Bowl, really was probably the best defensive tackle at both of those games. I would really keep an eye on him. I think he's a guy that feels like a Steelers player. And then DB mocked to the Steelers, Tim Keenan from Alabama, who is a little less flashy than Jackson, I would say, probably a little bit less explosive, maybe even bigger. I think this is a deep defensive tackle class, so I would probably not be really like pushing to trade up for one. I think you can find one even in the fourth round. I like Zane Durant from Penn State. I thought he had a great Senior Bowl. He's currently a mock draft database 144. I think if you can get that at 144, you probably don't need to trade up, especially because you're not talking about a guy that has to start this year for the Steelers. You're talking about a developmental player. But if the value's there, I mean, I never hate it, but I wouldn't think that trading up for D tackle there would be a priority. Now, you want to go get Peter Woods, I'm all for it. Go move up to 15, 12, whatever. Go get Peter Woods. I don't think that's a bad plan at all. But in the second round, I'm not so sure.
No, certainly. And, you know, you kind of mentioned the fourth round picks. I will say Omar Khan and Andy Weidel have made some pretty good fourth round picks. I mean, you got Nick Herbig, who's done really well. And Jack Sawyer, I mean, I know he's not that Nick Herbig-esque type of production player, but he's still made some splash plays in his rookie season.
And that's a position, that's a high value position too.
Yeah.
It's not like you're drafting fourth round guard safety where you kind of expect it. Like edge rusher in the fourth round is tough to be good on.
Absolutely. So we have KP here saying get in the van, and they say trade up for a legit wide receiver. That seems to be the major desire among Steeler fans. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen, but I kind of wonder if that will be as urgent if they can get someone that they really like in free agency, like someone like Alex Pierce or Romeo Dobbs. Maybe not someone who's like that type of I got to trade up for first round equivalents, if you will, in free agency comparing to the draft, but maybe would give them a little more flexibility. What are your thoughts on trading up for a wide receiver?
Well, first of all, I like all of Tate, Tyson, and Lemon. They are the three guys who are going to go in the first half of the first round, probably. But I also like Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion, who are going to be probably available to the Steelers or close to be available to the Steelers. And I also like the second round picks. Zachariah Branch, Chris Bell, Malachi Fields, Jeremy Bernard, Omar Cooper, who I've seen some people talking about as a first rounder. So I think they should trade up. I think the difference to me is that if you could get like Tyson is special, man. I think he's the one guy that for me stands like head and shoulders out of this group. He does have some injury concerns. We've seen the Steelers take risks with players with injury concerns under Omar and Andy. Say he gets to like 10, 12. I would be pulling the trigger on that. If it's just for one of the other guys, I don't think it would be a bad move. I also think you can just sit there at 21 and take Boston or Concepcion and feel pretty good about that. Boston is probably a bit too much like DK Metcalf to be ideal to play alongside him, but he's a good player. I don't think it would be a bad pick. I really think this is a great wide receiver class. Like I really that's one of my biggest takeaways from going to those two All-Star games is that there are a lot of really good wide receivers here.
Most certainly. And I will say one guy I like, but he's much more of a slot receiver, so I just don't think that the Steelers will look his way is Antonio Williams from Clemson. I really like him, but it's just the thing is he played a lot of slot, and that's not to say he can't play outside with some good coaching, but no, like you said, this wide receiver class is really deep. And it'll definitely be curious to see how quickly wide receivers start going off the board that first night. Jason Jones.
Like, I think I like the wide receivers more than I like any other position in the first round. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of a run, to be honest.
No, absolutely. I almost kind of want to think offensive linemen a few years ago where they're just going boom, 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 boom with the offensive tackles, especially.
I bet
Jason,
all 5 of those guys go in the top 25.
you said 5 in the top 25.
Yeah.
So if you guys are looking at DraftKings, the over under, if it's over 4.5, go for it. You heard it here from Alan, but don't take that as
That'll be in
financial advice.
DraftKings will be in the first round. I feel like 5 in the first round is kind of a slam dunk. You might get 6.
Absolutely. Jason Jones has an interesting question. He says, with the talk of releasing Ramsey, what would his trade value be if the Steelers decide just to retain part of his salary, third, fourth pick, or a player? I haven't personally seen a whole lot from, I guess reputable sources or anything like that. It feels like more speculation with Ramsey. But with that being said, I don't see anyone trying to trade for him at this stage in his career. If they did part ways, I think they would just release him and let him choose where he wants to go. Alan, what are your thoughts? And do you think Ramsey is a cap casualty?
I don't think he will be a cap casualty. I do think they could trade him. I don't know what they would get. Probably a day 3 pick, or maybe a 4th rounder, or some kind of like 3rd for a 4th, 3rd for a 5th, something like that. I don't know what this new staff is going to want to do with him, how they're going to see him as a nickel or as a safety. And what I don't really feel like we know what kind of coverage they want to run. And I think that's the really difficult part. Like what kind of, like, because as you said, Graham has done it a bunch of different ways. Joe Witt has done it a couple of different ways. What kind of coverage do they want to run? And I think they need to answer that question. And I think the reason you haven't seen any reporting about really any of these Steelers players is that the coaching staff is probably still sorting through that. And Omar Khan is just kind of sitting there waiting, like, okay, let me know what you want me to do, and then we'll go from there. But like, they're still hiring coaches, so I don't know how well they could know what they want to do at this point. So we'll see. To me, there isn't a compelling cap casualty case to make for Jalen Ramsey. He is a good enough player and has a great versatility to make what he's making. You're not going to cut him, eat the dead cap hit, and then go sign someone better for the same money. You're just not. But a trade more than feasible. I don't. I mean, I wouldn't think they'd get a lot for him, but they could trade him, certainly.
Yeah, and I guess, you make a great point there on whether he would be in that nickel or safety position. I guess it would also depend on their draft plans as well, because if they want him in the nickel, to me that says they're going to try to get a safety probably sooner rather than later. And that's assuming they don't go to the free agency well there. But I don't think you're going to make a lot of fans too happy if they keep prioritizing free agency for the defense. Adam has an interesting question. If the draft was today, who would be your guess for the first round? Alan, I'll let you take that one first.
Man, it's tough. I'll guess Mekhi Lemon. Trading up.
My guess would be Casey Concepcion, but I would not be surprised, and I know a lot of people disagree with me. I know Alan even disagrees with me. I would not be surprised if they end up liking one of these quarterbacks, and if they fall into their lap, they
Oh,
would
I
start
know they
talking
like
about it.
Ty Simpson. I just don't think he'll be there at 21.
Yeah, Ty Simpson's interesting. Like,
I
I've
saw
seen
somebody, I
mocks.
see somebody tweet a graph today of like his performance over the course of the season, and of course, it's like this one. He was playing hurt. Like, what? Like, do we not understand that? That was like a very well reported injury. Like, what are we doing?
That, and also he had to go to Auburn, which is that's the equivalent of like Pittsburgh going to Cleveland lately. It sucks. Like, I'm going to rephrase that. I love Auburn because I'm an Auburn fan, but it sucks for him. Like,
Yeah.
that's horrible. Then he had to go play Georgia. Then he had to go to Oklahoma, was down 17-0. He had to do all this without a running game. Meanwhile, like you said, injured elbow.
Yeah, I think like I would be putting a lot more stock in, and as I think people who people outside of the sport always put too much stock in college results. What they really care about is the tools and the physical package.
Yeah.
And I think he's got the tools. So I think he'll be first half of the first round player. That second Jets pick seems like a really good spot for him. I don't think he gets 21. And I don't think there's another quarterback that'll go really anywhere near the first round.
And I've seen some scenarios where the Rams trade with their second first round pick back up to go get him and then be the heir apparent to Matt Stafford.
I would like that very much if I were him. That would be a great spot for him to land.
Absolutely.
I think they're going to go the other way, though. I think they'll like take Tua as a backup or something like that.
I'm not a Tua fan at all. I don't even want his backup, I'm being honest with you guys. But that's just me. A lot of folks seem to like Tua, but I don't know. Steven says, I feel like we have to take a wide receiver in the first, second round. Also need to get at least one legit number 2 in free agency. So he's saying do the double dip there. And I feel like they will get someone in free agency. It's just the wide receiver crop is so skimp in free agency that you're just not going to get the cream of it, I feel like, unless you really, really pony up.
I actually don't hate this wide receiver class. I got to be honest. They've been way worse in recent years. I mean, Jawan Jennings, Alec Pierce, Romeo Dobbs. I like all three of those guys a lot. I think you can do things with like Rashid Shaheed, Christian Kirk. Like those are playable number 2 wide receivers. I'm not saying they're great. I'm just saying I think you can, especially in a situation where you have basically no one. All the Steelers have under contract is, and I actually just at the site today updated our depth chart for the offseason. So moved all the free agents over to the right column. And you can look at wide receiver, and it's Metcalf, Skoranek, Roman Wilson, Plumlee, Hurleman, and 3 guys from future contracts. Like that's it. And so I think they will absolutely get a starter. One of the 3 starters will come from free agency. And then at that point, I don't think you need a wide receiver in the first or second round more than you need a guard and a free safety and some other things. And so could they, if they get Alec Pierce, can they wait till the 3rd round? Yeah, probably. If it's just Hollywood Brown, no, they probably got to go. So I think it just depends on what they're able to do in free agency.
Hollywood Brown came to Pittsburgh. Do you think Antonio Brown would start tweeting a little bit more, or do you think he'd be kind of like, whatever?
I don't think Antonio Brown tweets anymore. I think that's somebody else.
You think someone else? Yeah. Yes, the grammar's been pretty good, so I'll have to give the credit there. Hunter, while we're kind of talking about quarterbacks a little bit earlier, he brings it up here. If Rodgers decides to retire, who's your best guess for quarterback 1 at this moment? And I do remember in 2022 when Ben retired, Mason Rudolph was the only quarterback under contract, and Art Rooney said, well, if we went to the season today, Mason would be the starter because he was the only guy under contract. So everyone's going to say, well, Mason and Will Howard would be the quarterback. So I guess it'd be one of those 2, and then they would, in their minds, convince themselves that they're the guys of the future. But I guess if we went into it today and I had to throw a shot in the dark into predicting, I would say probably Rodgers. But if he retires, I would say maybe they take a chance on Malik Willis. Who knows?
I don't think they'll get Malik Willis. I think he'll go to Green Bay. He'll go with Halfley from Green Bay to Miami. If not, I think somebody's going to throw some money at him, and I don't think it'll be them. I saw Ben Solak from ESPN, a friend of mine, wrote a good story about the quarterbacks that are available. I suggest you read it if you haven't. But, he said like $20 million as the floor for Willis, and that would be about my ceiling for him. I don't see it. I mean, I loved him coming out as a prospect, but the idea of paying him more than Justin Fields, I would just rather have Justin Fields. Like right now, I feel better about Justin Fields than Malik Willis. And I don't feel great about Justin Fields. Like you're taking an awfully big risk on a guy who played 6 games, like 4 of them, like in any meaningful amount of time. So who's the answer?
Will Howard. He's the future, Alan. Will
Kirk
Howard.
Cousins probably is like the best answer I can give you in terms of like where I think they would pivot to next.
Which, from what
I
I've heard,
think that Mike McCarthy has said some things about wanting to develop Will Howard that are meaningful, and I don't think we should brush them aside. I also think there's a good chance they come out of this draft with another quarterback. Like just because Mason Rudolph's on the roster doesn't mean he's going to be. I could see them Chambliss, Aller, Klubnik, taking a day 3 pick on a guy like that who falls and taking another swing at it. I could see that happening as well. But in terms of starting, I mean, Kirk Cousins is probably the best answer I have.
Don't say Aller because that gives people all kinds of shook up. And I even hints at him being drafted at any point by the Steelers, and people's man. That's if you guys ever want engagement, mention Aller.
Outside of Simpson, Aller is and Mendoza. To me, Aller is the only guy where I have 0 physical question marks about whether they can actually do the job. He's accurate enough. He has a strong enough arm. He's tall. He's fast. Like there's no unchecked physical box. It is just quarterback development. So if you hired Mike McCarthy to be the quarterback development guy, that is a perfect test of whether it's going to work.
No, certainly. Yeah. I will say, Nussmeier looks pretty good at the Senior Bowl, like the game that I saw.
He looked good in practice too. I think he has a relatively low ceiling. I think the best Nussmeier can ever be is like the 15th best quarterback in the league. And I don't see what you gain by even attempting that swing.
Yeah. Well, it would also make folks all kinds of crazy because he is connected to the Steelers because his father is good friends with McCarthy. So, that would just get people all kinds of riled up.
When you've been around as long as McCarthy has, everybody's connected to him. I can make a connection from every person in this draft class to Mike McCarthy, probably.
No, absolutely. Folks, we're about the 2-minute warning. We appreciate everyone kind of joining one.
What do you think they do for cornerback 2? I like this because I have no idea. I don't have any clue. I love this question. I don't know. I mean, James Pierre played well last year. Are they going to play the same kind of defense? Are they going to play zone, man, 2, 3, 4? That really changes whether I think James Pierre is the right answer. Asante Samuel, bringing in somebody else. I mean, as I just said, these guys all have connections. So, I mean, you can bring in guys from Green Bay. You can bring in guys from Dallas. You can bring in guys from Washington. I have no idea what is going to happen to cornerback. Other than it won't be Jalen Ramsay. That's the only thing I feel pretty good about. Other than that, I have no idea. It could be literally anyone. A great question. I don't have a clue.
If you were given $100 and they say, place this bet on who you think would be brought back, James Pierre or Asante Samuel Jr., who would you bet that $100 on if it was house money?
Samuel.
There you go.
I think he's a better fit for more defensive schemes. So I'm just hedging, basically.
Absolutely.
If you're not going to play cover 1, cover 3, you probably don't want James Pierre.
No, definitely. And I will say James Pierre, whether he's in Pittsburgh or with another team, he also brings a lot of special teams value as well. So
sure. I like James Pierre. I'm just I don't know what they're going to do on defense. So it's really hard to know.
No, yeah, it's definitely, and I hope that by the time they get to the combine, they have a vision in place. But no, it'll definitely be very interesting to see who they try to re-sign and Yeah, that's a good point there. The cornerback too. I think it's kind of something that has been kind of not off my radar, but maybe I do kind of overlook a little bit. We do have a question here about the Porter Pac-Man debate. That's been a little bit of a hot topic, Mr. Joey Porter Sr., that is. Uh, they're talking about Cincinnati on the podcast. He's asked if we've seen it. It was a total hoot. I did, because as soon as Pac-Man said, "We used to beat you guys all the time," or something like that, I was like going through my memory log in my head, and I was like, I can only think of maybe 3 times. And sure enough, they were 3-13 in the regular season from 2010 to 2018. So no, they did not beat the Steelers a lot. That was
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of reaction to I mean, I think it's interesting because Smitty and I were joking about this on the pod last week. It's like, I think it's interesting that if you ask Steelers fans, what team do you hate the most? They are never going to say the Bengals. Like, you probably get the Ravens from most people. You might get the Browns from some people. I doubt you're going to get the Bengals from too many. But if you ask Steelers fans which players from a rival team do you hate the most, man, Pac-Man and Perfect might be 1 and 2. Like, they might be the biggest ops for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that's fun, and I like that.
Yeah, and I think you throw in Myles Garrett there too, in that 1-2-3. Absolutely, that combination.
I think so. Like, I think if you ask what team do you hate the most Steelers fans would say the Ravens. And if you ask what players you hate the most, it would be Browns and Bengals that came before the Ravens. Like, I mean, who hates Terrell Suggs? I mean, Terrell Suggs is a Hall of Famer and was an absolute thorn in the Steelers' side. But, like, I've never experienced a lot of, like, personal vitriol towards Terrell Suggs. Like, I mean, no, it's just a really good player, and that's why you didn't like him. It's like personal with those other guys. So I think that's a lot of fun.
No, absolutely. Definitely. You just don't see that kind of rivalry in today's games, whether it's football, NBA, even baseball. Like the rivalries just aren't the same anymore, but hopefully things like this begin to kind of spark those. I will say, Seattle and LA, that's become a little bit of a feisty one, because Puka Nakua he said something about Sam Darnold on Twitter, and it got the Seahawks to respond. So maybe that'll ignite things a little bit.
Unfortunate on Twitter, you don't say.
You're right. All right, folks. Well, hey, we appreciate everyone signing in.
I want to take one more. I want to take this
one more. There we go.
Why not play the comp pick game all over again? The problem with the comp pick game is it's really hard to spend your money, right? So to get a comp pick, you have to lose a player. So let's say the Steelers decide not to re-sign anybody. Let's say the big one would be like, let's say Rodgers goes to the Vikings. Okay? And then they don't re-sign Isaac Seumalo. Somebody signs him, and they don't re-sign Pierre and Samuel, and somebody re-signs them. You could be in line to get 4 pretty good comp picks. But the problem is they have a ton of cap space. And the only way you can spend money without taking away from your own comp picks are to sign guys who are cut by other teams or to make trades. And so, with the amount of cap space they have, it's really hard to spend it if you're trying to play the comp pick game. That's why you kind of have to set yourself up to do it. And then, hey, the idea should be to draft well enough that you're playing that game every year because you're out of cap space because you spent so much money re-signing your own guys. But the Steelers are a long way away from that right
now. Yeah, and I will say last year it made a little bit more sense because Dan Moore Jr. was going to get paid because everyone's going to pay for an offensive tackle. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, those 3 guys is what made that strategy work. I don't really see an equivalent for the Steelers this year.
Yeah, this year maybe would have been George Pickens, but he's in Dallas, and Dallas is now going to.
And I think knowing their cap situation for this offseason, they kind of knew they weren't going to get it for George, and that's one of the reasons that they traded him ahead of time.
Absolutely, yeah. No, definitely a good question about the comp picks. Steelers gets a lot of comp picks this year, so that'll be nice to have. And we talked about trades. We talked about free agency. We'll definitely see what happens. So, folks, we appreciate everyone joining us here on this post-Super Bowl edition of the Steelers Night Shift. It's always fun to do this. We'll we'll definitely try to do this before free agency, or maybe right after free agency, or hey, maybe the day
Do it the
free
week
agency
between.
kicks off.
Let's do it the week between the combine and free agency.
Perfect. That works. And we'll do that. We'll kind of get some more projections and questions. And folks, you can find me on X at Joby Football. And Mr. Saunders, let them know where to find you if they are
Yeah,
not
and
familiar with the work.
you can find Joby Football at a new outlet as well,
Yeah,
expanding the horizons there. So congratulations, working with the big lead now, doing some national stuff and some college football stuff. Excited to read it. Already read the first one. And you can find me, A Saunders_PGH, on all the social medias. SteelersNow.com is where you can find the written work. Rolling out those draft interviews. Really good one at the top of the site right now with Nolan Rucci, Penn State tackle. I got Joe Cooper from Slippery Rock coming up later tonight as well. So look out for that.
absolutely. Folks, we appreciate everyone joining. And you guys have a good night. And let's see who runs the fastest 40 at the combine here in a few weeks.